Today we will feature the debate of the City of Spokane's Proposition 1, which we will define in a moment. We are pleased to have with us, and I'll have you come up as I mention your names, Mayor Lisa Brown and Council Member Jonathan Bingle. Most of our debates, are candidates. Today is not. It's an issue. So I think we owe a great deal of gratitude to both Mayor Brown and Councilmember Bingle for being here, putting themselves out here for an important discussion about taxation and the future of our public safety in the Spokane area. So let's give them a round of applause. Oh, you need a mic. Well, that's not very equitable, is it?
That would be very fair.
It would not be very fair.
Not at all.
Okay, we got mics are all working? Okay, good. Here we go. All of the questions for this debate came from you, our Rotarians. Getting a lot of echo. Is it too high? Down just a little bit. There were 40. You did a great job. 40 questions submitted. Obviously, we're not going to get to 40 questions. We'll probably get to less than half that many questions, but wanted to let you know I took a look at them. I tried to combine them where it was possible, and some of the questions were related but not necessarily right on point for this particular proposition, so we culled just a little bit in order to get as many questions in as we could in the time that we have. Prior to the debate, as normal, we conducted a coin flip which determined who would go first or second in both the opening and closing statements. In this case, we decided to expand the time given for opening statements to 3 minutes, normally a minute and a half, to help both Mayor Brown and Councilmember Bingle articulate not only their opinion about Proposition 1, but also a little bit about what it is in their words. Closing statements will be the normal 90 seconds. Following the opening statements, I will alternate asking questions of each of these elected officials, and they will have 90 seconds to respond, followed by a 45-second rebuttal from the other official. Rotarian John Hancock is our official timer with the yellow and red banners. At some point in the debate, it will give each elected official a chance to ask the other a question they have pre-submitted to us. The same response times and rebuttals will apply to those as well. And each candidate has a 1-minute wild card that they can use at any time during the debate to extend their time segment. Remember, of course, that during the debate, no applause nor any outward expressions of agreement or disagreement by anyone in the room is allowed. Use the four-way test as your guide. We also ask that Rotarian members and campaigns refrain from negative social media during and after the debate. Given that, now is your chance to welcome these two debaters again. You guys aren't going to get any applause during anything you have to say. So one more round of applause for two great public servants. Before we get into it and to kind of set it up, they've asked me to read, there's both a ballot title and an explanatory statement. They seem very repetitive, so I'm just going to read the explanatory statement. Proposition number 1 submits to the voters a measure proposing an increase in the sales and use tax of 0.1% for enhanced community safety functions pursuant to RCW 82-14-450. This tax is estimated to generate $7.7 million annually, 15% of which will go to Spokane County, resulting in about $6.5 million collected each year by the city. The funds will be dedicated to enhanced community safety purposes and other public safety functions, such as operations and other enhancements for the Spokane Police Department, Spokane Fire Department, Municipal Court, and the Office of Public Ombudsman. This proposal is expected to begin no later than January 1, 2025, and will cost the average resident about $1 per 1,000 they spend, with several necessities like food, prescription drugs, mortgages, or real property rentals not subject to the tax. We actually had a question about that. If the community safety proposition is not approved, the proposed operational enhancements will not occur or will have to be funded from currently identified sources. Okay, so there's the ballot measure. And so we're going to get going here. And as I said, we increased the opening statements to 3 minutes. And as a result of the coin flip, Councilmember Bingle will begin.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you, John. Thank you, Mayor Brown. Thank you, everybody in here, for giving us this opportunity. It is an incredibly important topic that we're going to be discussing today. Many of you have already filled out your ballots. You've already submitted your votes. But I want to start with a little bit of background on this idea for me. So I have been a fan of the sales tax measure for some time. As a matter of fact, in my first few months in office, I proposed this idea to then Mayor Woodward and to her staff as a way for us to get more officers on the streets, because there is no one more important issue to us right now than public safety in the city of Spokane. Now, as that was going, we had a plan that we were going to be able to add, dozens of officers to the city of Spokane, fully equipped with vehicles, everything they needed. We were going to be able to purchase land and be able to build precincts, because currently we have space issues for our police as well. And the reason why I ended up withdrawing my proposal was because I received a phone call from then Sheriff Knezevich, who said, "Hey, Jonathan, what are you trying to accomplish?" And I said, I want the city of Spokane to be a safer and cleaner place for our people, right? That's why I got into office. I want my wife to want to come downtown and enjoy our beautiful natural resources and our parks. And he said, "Okay, if that's what you're trying to accomplish, I'm not going to support your plan, because your plan won't do it." And I said, "Okay, you've been in this game a long time. Help me understand, why won't that do it?" And he said, "Well, Jonathan, you can put another 50 officers on the street." And he said, "But unless you have some place to put people who are committing crimes, it really is not going to make any significant dent in the public safety." And so at that point, I listened to the man who'd been doing it far longer than me. I like to listen to people who have great wisdom, and I thought Knezevich had that. And so I withdrew my proposal and started working with the county on how can we get a public safety measure passed that would include a jail, because a significant amount of crime committed on the streets of Spokane are by, less than 100 people, and we know who they are. The unfortunate thing is that constantly we don't have a place to put people. And so for us, the reason why I oppose this measure is not because I oppose it in theory. I think in theory it makes some sense for us. But if what our goal is to accomplish is to make Spokane a safer and cleaner city, which is my goal and my vision for this city, then this sales tax measure is going to fall woefully short of what we need to accomplish. And so for me, I think the thing that I want you all to think about for yourself is, what does public safety mean to you? Because think about it as we're going, because I think there might be a difference in how you think of public safety and others do. And so for me, anything that harms our ability to get a jail measure moving forward, and I'll explain later in the questions how this measure will do that, is something that we should not be supporting.
Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you, Rotarians, President Page, Paul, Councilmember Bingle. Thank you for your civic engagement and for your service. I'm pleased to be with you today to talk about this community safety proposal. One of the first things facing me as mayor was bringing on new public safety leadership. I first brought on Maggie Yates as our Assistant City Administrator for Community Safety, and we went through an extensive process engaging with community, neighborhoods, rank and file police and firefighters, as well as leadership. I personally met with over 100 individuals and organizations. We did an online survey, and I'm pleased to report I think we've hit the jackpot with our fire chief, Julie Oberg, and our police chief, Kevin Hall, who's been engaged for about a month. And I encourage you as Rotarians to invite either or both of them forward to hear more about their philosophies. But this proposal came out of that. And it is a proposal that invests in those first responders and in that justice system that then keeps us safe in our families and businesses. You already know a lot about the basics according to what Paul introduced, but let me just emphasize a couple of pieces of it. If you spend $1,000 on things that are covered by sales tax, that's an extra $1. But things like healthcare, rent, groceries are excluded. It's not just paid by our residents, but visitors to Spokane. I also proposed a 10-year sunset, and that all the funds go into a community safety fund, so there is transparency for the residents and voters today and into the future for where the funds are spent. and that was recently adopted by the City Council. The most important piece that you might not realize is because you probably knew that I inherited a very significant budget deficit, estimated in January at $25 million for next year, is that we have been working hard in our cabinet and with our organized labor representatives to reduce that structural deficit so that the budget that I will propose to council next month over the 2-year period of that budget will eliminate that structural deficit so that these funds can go to the new community safety investments that the public wants. Those are police, bringing back the neighborhood resource officers and the traffic safety unit dismantled under the previous administration, fire, a new fire academy, and investments in the Office of Police Ombuds that has not been expanded since 2018, and our municipal court system, which needs the capacity to do best practices that divert people from jail, as well as ensure that our system is just.
Thank you so much. So now we'll get to the questions provided to us by our Rotarians. We're going to start with the budget because that's part of the why, if you will. And Councilman Member Bingle, you will be first up. And this was directed specifically to you. Councilmember Bingle, you were on the council when the current shortfall had already started and then continued to grow. How would you address the current shortfall?
Yeah, no, this is a great question, and I appreciate it. For those aware of the council, we absolutely are the ones who control the purse strings. The budget is well within our purview, and it requires a majority to pass a budget. Now, many in here are also aware of the council makeup and where the ideological lines fall. And people like me, you know, as much as I would like to say, man, I'm so effective, let me tell you all the things I'm able to accomplish on the city council. In the end, you know, the council majority is the one that makes the decision. And the council majority approved the budget and has been approving the budget. And that was filled with people like, you know, Council President Brian Beggs and Council President Lori Kinnear and current Council President Betsy Wilkerson. And so that budget was passed by a majority of our city. What it comes down to is that we absolutely do have a deficit, and there are things that we need to accomplish. I proposed plans earlier on in the city that would not have included a public safety sales tax. It would not have included a sales tax. It would have included raising our rates a little bit because we needed to make up for that structural deficit. But what we would have done is significant public outreach on exactly what we were going to raise to make sure that we could do it, including continuing to trim the fat from the budget, which is what we're doing now. So that's what we would have done.
Thank you. And Mayor, 45-second rebuttal.
So the structural deficit was created over the last 3 to 4 years, and the council member did participate in that and has not provided any specifics about what would happen on either the revenue or the expenditure side. On the other hand, my administration has enacted the salary savings plan proposed by the Police Guild, cabinet furloughs, a 6-month delay in COLAs. We postponed the 24 Fire Academy, restructured the communication department. We're moving from paper to digital. We renegotiated contracts, and we have steadily reduced that structural deficit so that we can invest these funds in key community safety investments that we know the public wants and that we need.
Thank you. And Mayor Brown, you've mentioned some of this already, but this is a question I think one of our Rotarians would like to have answered, and it is on that same subject. When you became Senate Majority Leader, you faced a $2 billion shortfall in the state budget. Now, as mayor, you face another shortfall. How did you fix that first one, and with your colleagues? And what options do you see for the second? You mentioned a little bit of that, but maybe go out a little bit longer term.
Well, I'll just say when it came at the state level, we looked at both revenue and expenditure adjustments, and that was a very challenging process, but we got there. And I always work to get votes, actually, on the budgets that I introduced as Ways and Means Chair from the other side of the aisle, and I think that that's an important way to work together after the elections are over. But in this case, we found that we could actually make a whole series of small adjustments that could eliminate the deficit. And part of that, frankly, has been working with our labor organizations. The Management Professional Union agreed to a voluntary retirement incentive plan. The Police Guild had already negotiated an ability for a plan that allowed more senior officers to retire. You hire in at the new level, and you get a long-term savings in that. We have a few more things that we're working on with our bargaining units, but one way or the other, we will make the budget balance. Unfortunately, I also had to send out layoff notices. So a couple dozen of city employees have received those preliminary notices. We hope that we don't have to go there. That's why we're talking with the bargaining units about some other measures. But we will do what it takes on the expenditure side so that we can bring that, our historical revenue, 3% a year, together with our expenditures and invest these new funds in community safety.
Councilman Bingle, a rebuttal?
Yeah, I would say I've actually proposed quite a few specifics on how we would fix our budget program. Whether they're listened to or not is one thing. But when the mayor became the Senate Majority Leader, there was a $2 billion shortfall. But when she was in the legislature in the 90s, there was a $700 million surplus. And so in the 15 years of her leadership in the State House, we actually went from a $700 million surplus to a $2.8 billion shortfall under her leadership and Democratic leadership in the State House. And so I also believe in working together. I've brought a number of specifics to the mayor. Some of them have been rejected, some of them have been adopted, and some of them, particularly in this sales tax measure, that she claimed to have proposed, but things that her and I discussed plenty behind closed doors.
And Councilman Member Bingle, next question is a little bit of a twist from one of our Rotarians. With public safety being a perceived top priority of the community, why not fund that as a top priority of the general fund and put up to vote funding for such things as neighborhood planners, economic development, and other smaller programs?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, you bet. With public safety being perceived as a top priority for the community, why not fund that as a top priority in the general fund and put up for public vote funding for such things as neighborhood planners, economic development, and other smaller programs?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty fair question. I don't think that there's not a doubt in my mind that some sort of funding plan for the city needs to go out, and I think that that's something that I would happily participate in, to go out to the voters and say, hey, here are the services that you're expecting from the city. Here's a way that we can fund it. I think that that's totally fair, and I actually like that idea because then the voters can tell us what their priorities are rather than just us as council members. So I like that. Certain departments of the city, you're not going to be able to affect the general fund in that way because they're enterprise funds, right? Your trash, you're not going to be able to affect. Your water, you're not going to be able to affect because those are enterprise funds and they're funded solely through the fee structures that you pay. But there are portions of the general fund that I think that we should be eliminating. For example, I voted against a proposal that came from the mayor and her staff that included $1.9 million from the general fund that went towards homelessness funding. And right now, when we're in a budget crisis, situations like that are not things that we can be funding out of the general fund. There are also entire departments of the city that I think should be looked at. Do we maybe, sub this work out? Sorry, a former contractor. Do we sub this work out to somebody else and allow them to do it for us? Or is this something that right now we might pick up in the next 5-10 years as the budget is not in such a crunch, but right now is not part of the essential city services? And so I think we need to look seriously at actually cutting departments in the city.
Go ahead, Mayor.
The council member's mistaken on my record in the legislature. We are required to put forward 2-year balanced budgets. And during my tenure as Senate Majority Leader, we not only created the rainy day fund, but we created a 4-year budget outlook. But at the city level, the things that were mentioned here, planners, code enforcement, are fee-based revenue accounts. The general fund is primarily public and safety. It's primarily police and fire, and a few other aspects of centralized city government like HR, budget, the city council office, and the mayor's office. So what we're proposing here is, in fact, to enhance, balance the budget and the general fund with our 2-year budget, use these funds to enhance community safety.
Thank you. And let's shift to what happens if Proposition 1 does not pass. And the first question from Rotarians is to you, Mayor. And it says, you and the new police chief have proposed increasing law enforcement presence downtown by 1/3. If Proposition 1 fails at the ballot box, how will you accomplish increasing public safety?
Yes, I would encourage people to look at the core plan that was proposed by Chief Hall, and it's currently a 30-day project with data being collected in order to understand what's effective, modify the plan if need be, and of course, we want to sustain it in our ongoing 2-year budget. The plan is about crisis outreach, response based on place-based policing, as well as engagement with the population. There are parts of the unhoused population that are very willing, in fact eager, to be navigated to a navigation center and then to services and housing. There are other parts that are very treatment resistant, and that is going to require enforcement in order to address that portion of the population. If this plan does not pass, we will continue to work to sustain the core plan, but the key part of this is that the last administration dismantled neighborhood officers and traffic safety in order to create a downtown precinct. That was a zero-sum game, and the neighborhoods have felt it, and our traffic safety fatalities have expanded dramatically. So we need to turn that around. Also, traffic has a key component to other types of criminal activity. So we need that traffic safety unit. We need those neighborhood resource officers. And of course, we want to maintain and build on the experience of this core plan, which has enforcement and community engagement and co-responder teams with behavioral health specialists.
Thank you. And Councilman, your rebuttal?
Yeah, we did fund the traffic program in last year's budget. We took $1.8 million from our traffic calming funds to fund the traffic program. So to say that they were dismantled, I don't think is fair. I think it came down to what I hear from Council President Wilkerson all the time is resources. We put money forward to make sure that those things were funded because they are incredibly important. There's not a thing I hear more about in my neighborhood council meetings than, hey, people are speeding up and down my streets, and we want that funded, and we fully funded that program. So it's not as if there wasn't the funds there for that.
Thank you. And Councilman, this question was directed to you. You have said you want more public safety. Without an increase in funding, how do you propose to make this happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, I again, with my opening statement, said that I'm actually in favor of a measure going out to the public. As a matter of fact, we had a pretty robust plan last year when the jail measure was going forward. I know what we were told is it was a blank check and there was no plan, but actually there was a pretty significant plan that we'd worked on and how we were going to be able to add 40 officers over the next 10 years, not just the officers themselves, but we were going to be able to build the precincts. We were going to be able to build fire stations. We need 3 to 4 fire stations in the next 5 to 10 years. We were going to be able to fund all the take-home car programs that we needed. We were going to add 3 court commissioners. We were going to add a judge, and we were going to get a jail, because for us to truly impact public safety, it does need to be a holistic approach. And that's what our plan did. And so my plan as a council member does include a ballot measure going out to the public. Just this one right here will procedurally block us from being able to do so, because the county needs a legal assurance that they can take the 1/10 from the city of Spokane. Because if they can't take the 1/10 from the city of Spokane, you think the Valley is going to partner on this? You think Deer Park? You think Liberty Lake? Absolutely not. Why would they give 2/10 if we can only give 1/10? And so for me, increasing public safety 100% comes with the ballot measure, but a well thought out and coordinated ballot measure with the county.
I agree with a coordinated ballot measure with the county, but what the councilman just said was not what we had last year. Specifically, the former mayor didn't even endorse that proposal. And the reason was there wasn't an agreement between the city and the county on the operation of the facility. It's one thing to build new facilities, and we need them. We need quality and quantity enhancement. But it's another thing to have an operating plan so the city knows how much it's going to be paying for those jail beds. And we need the comprehensive mental and behavioral health support. Those dollars are controlled by the county. They should be on the table and part of this proposal. Nevertheless, When this passes, there will still be capacity, 1/10 of a cent, that the county, the city, the valley, and other local governments could come together on a new plan. And I will actively participate in that, having sent a letter to the county commissioners inviting them to sit at a table with me and receiving no response from them to that letter.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to shift now, before we shift to a different topic, to questions from each of these two elected officials. And the first one will be asked by Mayor Brown.
Oh, I thought you were asking.
Would you like me to ask? I have them here.
I did the same. I did the same.
but-
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
we gave it to
This,
you.
okay, great. We are in good shape here. Your question to Councilman Bingle is, how can you claim to prioritize community safety when you're opposing a proposal that would directly fund the enhancements to police, fire, and municipal court departments in our community that our community is asking for?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to remember that we can only fund those things if we get the budget to zero. And the mayor even said this in her State of the City on Monday night, that we're going to be able to add these enhancements if we can reach our budgetary goals, and there's no guarantee that we will. So I, again, have not been opposed to a ballot measure. I think I've said it about 7 times already, but I encourage a ballot measure to go out. I think it's going to be great for the community to say this is what our priority is. Now, what I want in a ballot measure is I want a surety in the ballot measure. So the mayor said that she proposed a 10-year sunset. Actually, we proposed a much better sunset that would have been in the ballot language, that would have been actually binding, because what we have right now is a fake sunset. Okay, it's an AI sunset, because councilmanically we can overturn it tomorrow. It was instituted by ordinance. It can be overturned tomorrow with a simple majority. Okay? The dedicated fund is really, again, a fake dedicated fund, because it is largely funded by the general fund. And so what can happen is you can actually supplant all of those funds so that you can actually take the general funds, which are very flexible funds, and spend them on something else. And when Mayor Brown originally proposed it, she included things like safe streets initiatives. Now, earlier I told you to think about, what does community safety mean to you? Does protected bike lanes mean community safety to you, or public safety, when you're thinking about the crime, the drugs, and the vandalism that are happening downtown and throughout the city? I don't think that's probably what you had in mind.
Well, the reality is that the council member is not giving you a proposal to fund additional community safety. And you have a proposal in front of you that will do just that. And it does have a legally binding sunset on it. And I think the specifics have not been given as to what we are going to get as an alternative. And he says a ballot measure that would have to be at least a year out, so at least a couple years before we see any results. I can tell you that our our fire academy needs to happen next year, because we need that pipeline of firefighters. Our police officers deserve to have the funding that will actually enhance the number of police officers in our force, that will free up the officers and detectives to do their job, because there will be dedicated neighborhood
Paul, I'd
resource
like to use
and
my
traffic
wild card here.
officers.
And yes, go ahead for 1 minute wild card.
I totally agree that our officers deserve that, which is why I worked so hard on the jail measure last year to help get it passed, because it would have brought in about $10 million a year for us, and we would already be collecting that money now. Not everybody on this stage supported that measure, because whatever reason. But that's something that would have been impacting public safety right now. We could have been working on getting officers on the streets right now. We could have been working on building our public safety structures to house folks who are committing crimes right now. We could have been affecting the courts right now. We could have been doing that right now, and we're not. And now we're in a situation where we have to go out and ask the people again, after we just opposed pretty heavily the one that would have done everything that we're asking for now and more. And so when she says that I don't have a proposal, or I don't have a plan, or I'm not going out, it's fundamentally false. I've said it about 7 times today already. But there was 100% a plan. I sent it to the county commissioners with the letter saying, here's what we would do with it. Please get it going.
Thank you. And Councilman, your question to Mayor Brown, would you like me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay. Mayor Brown, how will the community safety sales tax you're proposing tangibly reduce crime in Spokane?
Well, this is really important. We all know we have a fentanyl crisis. We have unhoused on the street, and our officers are the first responders to that, and so are our firefighters. So our fire and police department have formed co-responder units that are firefighters and police officers with mental health specialists that are out there right now responding to the crisis on the street. But at the same time, we are utilizing state and federal funding to enhance our affordable housing and our system of shelters and the capacity to address people in crisis. But let me point out, the county controls the behavioral health funds. The city can put housing funds on the table, the county could put behavioral health funds on the table, and we would have a much more coordinated and responsive system. I will tell you that at the staff level, good work is happening. So you may hear that not happening at the elected level, but at the staff level it is happening. I'm very proud of our team. They're working with the county, the valley, and the regional health district, and you will soon see a new homeless system dashboard so that people will be able to track the expenditures and the individuals and what's happening. And we worked together with the county to achieve some of those mental health sales tax dollars, and they have quite a reserve of them, in order to help support our behavioral health co-responder teams. That type of partnership at the staff level needs to now extend to the elected official level.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Councilman?
Yeah, I would say I agree that the county controls the mental health dollars, which is why I've spent the last year and a half trying to help stand up a regional homeless authority. And prior to November of last year, we had what was a loose agreement between both the county, the City of Spokane Valley, and the surrounding cities on how we would best coordinate the housing dollars that the City of Spokane has, the mental health dollars that the county controls, all the smaller dollars that the cities have, plus they have available stocks of land that we would be able to do to actually have a coordinated approach to this issue. And so it's not that I disagree with asking the county on and partnering with mental health dollars. We actually had a good agreement in place, and then after November it died.
I'll take my 1 minute.
Got it.
So the Regional Homeless Authority proposal that the council member is referring to did not include the county's behavioral health dollars. It said the city will put its whole housing department and all of its housing dollars into this new entity. The voting mechanism would be such that there would be a couple of city representatives, and the county had not committed to put any behavioral health dollars into that pot. And so I said, let's keep sitting at the table, and thanks to Councilmember Amber Waldorf, we are still at the table at the elected level, but at the same time deployed my team at the staff level to start creating the partnerships that we can build on. And one of those key partnerships that we are having success on is the Crisis Stabilization Unit. That was funded by Commerce when I was there. Frankly, I encouraged the county to move faster when I was there. It is underway now, and we need to expand it. And the county and the city have gone together to Senator Murray and others saying, please help us with federal funds so we can expand that crisis stabilization unit. The police know that it's a very effective way to take people in crisis, get them stabilized, they're off the street, and then they get hopefully engaged in medical-assisted treatment and therapies that then lead to stability, and not the revolving door of people on the street and then back in the emergency room.
Getting a lot of prepositions in that last sentence.
I did, sorry.
Thank you both, actually, for those questions and for that robust discussion. I think it's helpful. Accountability came up several times amongst our Rotarians on this particular issue, and I know that each of you have mentioned the council action that took place that wasn't part of the ballot measure. Mayor, you are up for this question, and so in that context, the City Council recently took action regarding Proposition 1. Explain that action. What did it do and what didn't it do? Are there risks to the voters? And how important is a sunset clause?
Well, first of all, you have my commitment that during the time I am mayor, I am committing these funds to enhancement to community safety, the kind that we've laid out already, as well as if we are able to create ways to further fund our capital needs, we may be able to free up even more of those funds for actual personnel in police and fire. So you have that commitment from me. But ultimately, you also have a legally binding ordinance that sunsets this within 10 years. The reason we said within 10 years, because if we achieve another agreement with the county and we want to repeal the 1/10 to add to another 1/10 that the county-wide, we would have the ability to do that. And the ultimate guardrails here is that every other year you get to elect new council members, and you also get to be the ones that make the decision on this measure.
Thank you. And rebuttal?
Yeah, I think accountability comes down to trust. Do you trust the people in charge of the money to do what they say they're going to do with it? And when you look at this council, we have a majority who have either signed pledges or openly talked about the need to defund the police. And now they're telling you suddenly, oh, no, we're very pro-police. We're very pro-public safety. I have my doubts. Now, when it comes to the sunset clause, I actually, again, offered as an amendment to this ordinance that it would automatically sunset if the county were to take a proposal out and it was successful, it would automatically sunset there. That proposal was deferred indefinitely, okay? It failed by this council. And now they want you to believe, oh, no, trust us. We will totally do this, even though they had the opportunity to adopt that automatic trigger when it came, and they didn't. And so, do you trust these people when they already told you who they are?
Thank you so much. Next question, same topic, and it goes to you, Councilman. Again, what would limit use of the funds for the proposition? And these are very specific pieces of the question. Could future councils or mayors decide to use it for other uses? What if, for example, they decide that climate change is a community safety issue and use of the funds for climate-related initiatives?
Yeah, so because this dedicated fund wasn't in the ballot language and it's established by ordinance, 100% this council can change how it's used, okay? So we keep telling you all these things. Oh, but this is exactly how it's going to do. It's legally binding, and yes, for now it is legally binding. But when I spoke with the mayor and her team early on in this process, I offered to be an emissary to the business group and to the folks that I have credibility with, and said, if we adopt these things right here, I will actually go and help you promote this, and it just never happened. The sunset was one of them. We could have put that in the ballot language. That would have been legally binding outside of council action. Council could not have overturned that. We could have created a dedicated fund that council could not have overturned. Everything that we've instituted can be overturned by a council tomorrow. And keep in mind, in 10 years from now, none of us will be on this council. We can serve 2 4-year terms unless one of us is elected to council president or something like that. So the people making promises to you now, because it's not in the ballot language, will not be able to follow through on their promises when that time comes. And in the future, will a council look to overturn this? I guarantee you they will, because I will ask you a question. When was the last time you know of where government said, we're going to take some money and we're going to totally give it back, trust us, and then they gave it back?
Mayor Brown, your
Well, the
rebuttal?
council member is selling you politics and distrust. He is not selling you a solution. He has not proposed one that actually moves us forward. This is a solution that actually moves us forward. That's why the Police Guild, the Firefighters Union, leadership of police and fire, and numerous community groups have gotten on board with it, because they see the results that can come if we work together and move this forward. We modified the proposal after hearing from the community that they wanted something smaller and more targeted that didn't impact rents and mortgages. So we transferred from property to sales, and we modified it. We're doubling the low-income benefit in our utility rates in order to make it more affordable for the average Spokane citizen. And
Thank
it
you.
offers us results soon.
Thank you, Mayor. Although homelessness is a bigger, far more complex issue, Rotarians do see a link to this public safety initiative. Let's talk a little bit about that. Have a couple of questions at least. And this one goes to you, Mayor. Would Proposition 1 help the city address homelessness and fentanyl crisis facing Spokane?
Yes, it would. First, I want people to understand that what the council member said about proposing major expenditures out of the general fund for this situation, that is incorrect. Historically, the city has had only a very small amount of funding that has gone directly to emergency shelters. That's $250,000, and to homelessness. The Family Promise and a few entities have received some of those funds. However, there are state and federal funds that flow through the city and that the city, through competitive processes, awards to entities. But most of the foundational bedrock of our system is nonprofits, and they rely on grants, not just from the city, but the county, the state, commerce, et cetera, and philanthropy. We have been coordinating those providers into a system, as well as the behavioral health providers. We've been doing intercept mapping of our system, thank you Maggie Yates, which looks at the coordination between both behavioral and mental health providers, housing providers, and law enforcement. And we are coordinating and essentially building a system where there wasn't one before. Example, police and fire are now working together so that their co-responder units alternate, so we have them on the streets every day downtown. We are working with providers to do cleanup and engagement and outreach earlier in the morning. So this is just an example of how we're putting a system together.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Bingle.
And again, respectfully, maybe she missed the vote, but $1.9 million of general fund dollars, 100% went to fund homelessness services not but 3 months ago, okay? We do put $250,000 towards emergency services, but general fund dollars are absolutely being spent on homelessness. Now, she is right in that the vast majority of money that we spend on homelessness is pass-through dollars from the federal or the state government, and that is 100% accurate. But there are millions of dollars this year that we approved out of the general fund, which would have helped with our structural gap. That would have been 1/8 of the structural gap had we been able to not spend those dollars on it.
Good, thank you. Next question, same topic. One Rotarian asked, and this is to you, Councilman, will reducing homelessness actually reduce crime? Another asked, will creating more shelter space directly correlate to reduced crime?
Well, I'd like to first start by saying that, there is a correlation, but homeless folks are not inherently committing crimes, okay? So it's not that people who are homeless are also criminals. That's not accurate. But there is 100% a crossover. And the crossover that you're going to see is typically when we think about homelessness, we think about folks who have severe substance use disorder or severe mental illness. Now, people with substance use disorder often are people committing crime so that they can feed that disorder, okay? And so for us, are homeless people committing crimes? Yes. Are homeless people not committing crimes? Also true. But if we reduce our homeless population, you 100% will see a decrease in crime because there is a criminal element in there. Now, it's not going to reduce all crime because not all crime is committed by homelessness. I don't know how many times I can say that to be honest, but there is a criminal element there that needs to be addressed.
Mayor, 45 seconds.
Thank you. I'll keep to it, I promise. So you heard it from the council member. He did propose one specific thing, which was cutting homeless funding that's currently in the city's budget. And that's not going to help our situation. And he's correct. The vast majority of it comes through state and federal funding. I brought new resources to the table. $1 million appropriation from the legislation to enhance street medicine outreach, and $4 million to enact our navigation center and our new scattered site shelter model. These are the things that are going to make a measurable best practices difference in removing unhoused people from the streets and separating them from the people who prey on them with criminal activity and fentanyl.
Thank you. And since we're on the subject, one Rotarian asked, and this goes to you first, Mayor. Should it be, not is it, but should it be a crime to sit and lie on a public sidewalk? And if not, what alternatives would you suggest?
It absolutely is not appropriate for people to disrupt pedestrian or business or visitor activity by sitting or sleeping on our streets. The reality is we also have to have a place for them to go. It's not enough to say you can't go here. And as the councilman already admitted, they can't all go to the jail. The jail keeps us on red light status, and most of our misdemeanors are not even booked into the jail. They're booked and released. We are examining alternatives to that right now, and you will hear some proposed from us over the next year. But a key is being able to navigate these individuals to a navigation center and then create the ability for them to get the services they need in terms of recovery and treatment. We have a big issue with citing those facilities because neighbors are scared that it will bring ancillary criminal activity. And so we have to go through a thoughtful process with them in order to have them understand that we do need more of these sobering beds and we do need more of these facilities. We need them to be small scale, they need to have security and fencing, and we can demonstrate through that process that people can move on, and many people actually have moved on from the street to treatment to their own housing. The problem is we still have more people becoming homeless every month, so it's a problem that's not just a limited number of people.
Thank you. Your rebuttal, Councilman?
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be a crime, not one that's imposed all the time, just a tool for police to use when necessary. The sit and lie ordinance that I proposed, as a matter of fact, would have expanded it to be citywide because currently it's only in small pockets of downtown, and it's a citywide problem. But that was deferred indefinitely by the city council majority, and so we'll never get to know if that's what we as a city believe. Now, you're right, we need a place for them to go. This is one of the many proposals that I've brought forward to the city, pretty famously, the Medical Lake situation. And I bring lots of things forward, but we need a place for them to go, so then why now are we closing track? Why is it now that we're seeing a larger number of folks in our point-in-time count downtown? And it's because in a time when we shouldn't be closing track, we're closing it.
Thank you. Of course, no tax measure can be thought of in a vacuum. The next couple of questions are in that space, and the first one is to you, Councilman.
Okay.
Do you believe that city residents are feeling taxed out? How might Proposition 1 impact any upcoming county, library, and even school measures?
Yeah, no, this is a very good question, and I mean, this is why any tax measure that we put out there has to be so incredibly well thought out and well defined. Otherwise, I don't think that any of them are going to pass. We saw the school measure last year fail in a way that, we haven't seen a school measure fail in a long time, but with inflation being what it is, I mean, I represent the poorest part of the city. Every single one of my zip codes is a distressed census tract, and so when I talk to my people, even if it's just, $1 per thousand, or if it's, whatever the amount is, it's something that they're already feeling the squeeze. So are the citizens feeling taxed out? I think so. And that's why any tax measure that we put out there, regardless of how beneficial it is, has to include a robust system of public outreach. And this particular one did not have as good a public outreach as it should have, because originally what was proposed is a $1 per thousand property tax levy that would have brought in $37 million for the city, would have impacted the average person by about $40 a month, which obviously wouldn't have flown. And so then we transitioned, as the mayor said, into the sales tax measure. But the problem is people absolutely are feeling this squeeze on their wallet.
Thank you. And your rebuttal?
Yeah, we did modify this measure due to the sensitivity about its impact on families. And as we mentioned before, it is a small impact. If you spend $1,000, it's an extra dollar on things that are taxed, excluding grocery, rent, and medications. We're also sensitive to this, so we've proposed increases in our low-income discounts in our utility rate package. So this is something that if you read the Inlander article where all the neighborhood organizations were interviewed, or you talk to people on the street, they want that enhanced. They definitely want traffic safety back. They want that enhancement to community safety, and this will give them that, and it can start next year. And my first budget that I will introduce will demonstrate that in about a month.
Thank you. Also, a similar ballot measure that would have provided, we've mentioned a couple of times, but Rotary would like us to drill down a little bit, would have provided funds for a new jail as well as public safety. Some say it failed for lack of specific info on how the funds would be used. Is Proposition 1 specific enough? And this one goes to you, Mayor.
Yeah, I think that measure failed pretty dramatically because the specificity wasn't there, and it talked mostly about facilities, I think 3 new facilities, and not about the programming that supports effective movement of people into treatment, behavioral health, and into detention facilities when they need to be there. Also, the key component there is the operating aspect of those facilities. And you need upfront agreement between the city and the county on that. Otherwise, the funds that come back to the city will then go back to the county in terms of operating the jail, and there will actually be no additional capacity to hire additional police officers. So that upfront, transparent agreement between city and county is absolutely what has to be in place before voters should support any measure that the county puts forward.
Councilman?
Well, in the measure that the county put forward, we would have received about $10 million a year, and the county couldn't have told us what to do with that, so we could have done what we wanted. But is there enough specificity in this one? I think there's about as much specificity in this one as there is the jail measure. I think it's both trying to give you concepts of an idea. We wanted a new jail. There was going to be wraparound services. There was going to be ways that we were going to transition people from the jail into housing, into those things. I think that there was enough specificity there. I would say it rivals the specificity of this plan. As a matter of fact, we actually tried to give more specificity to the plan that would have, again, been binding in the ballot language that was rejected by the council majority. And so it could have been even more specific had people like myself been allowed to bring those proposals forward.
Thank you. And next question is you, Councilman, and it's related. I'm going to combine a couple of questions Rotarians had. One is, did you support the countywide proposition for the jail? And if this Proposition 1 passes, what chances does it have of also passing in the future to bring it forward?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I absolutely did. I think I've said it again a number of times. I supported that measure. I think there is not a single thing more important for public safety in the city of Spokane and in eastern Washington than getting a new jail built. There's, again, the way that we get crime off the streets is to get the people committing the crimes off the streets, okay? It's as simple as that. What was the second part of the question there?
Does it have stand a chance if Proposition 1?
And this comes down to, again, it comes down to trust in your elected leadership because, again, I tried to put forward an amendment that would have caused an automatic sunset on ours to move it forward, but unless we as a council and we as a body agree to something, then the county cannot legally put something forward. And if you, again, live in Spokane Valley or you live in Airway Heights or you live somewhere else around the city that's not in the city of Spokane, why would you agree to a 2/10 increase in your sales tax and the city of Spokane is only going to be contributing 1/10? I don't think there's a single person who would make that deal. And so for us, putting this forward creates serious roadblocks to get a new jail measure put forward, both in the appropriateness of it, how well it's going to be accepted, and there are real legal barriers that we are going to put in place if this passes.
The legislature authorized 3/10 for community safety. The county has already taken 1/10. We're already paying that. This 1/10 would be paid by the city. The rest of the capacity in the county is still there for the entire 2/10, as well as 1/10 that we could agree to and spend. So there is capacity. There is capacity for an agreement, and there's capacity for an agreement with facilities and programs, especially if we put our housing dollars and the county puts its behavioral health dollars together. And it's not just about building the facility, it is about operating it. How much will we pay per night? That is a very critical part of the agreement. And on behalf of our taxpayers, we must have that agreement before we go forward with the county.
Thank you. Let's return to the accountability question because it has some relevance to this and especially with the specificity of the proposal. A Rotarian asks, how would independent audits ensure the responsible use of funds from Proposition 1? And we'll start with you, Mayor.
Well, we do in fact we are in fact subject to audits at the state level on an annual basis, numerous audits. We're also audited for all of our grants. These funds will be very transparent because they go into a community safety fund where they go from there. So I don't believe we need additional audits, and I'm not sure who would pay for those additional audits. But I do think the ultimate transparency is there, as well as the specificity. We know neighborhood resource officers, at least 7, will be funded by this. We know a traffic safety unit will be reconstituted, and Chief Hall has great details on that, both technology, and we're looking at the place-based data about where to deploy it. We know that the municipal court will get to, we know specifically what they're doing with therapeutic courts, electronic monitoring, and the other things that divert people from jail. We know the Office of Police Ombuds, what they do and what they will do with additional capacity. It's quite specific.
Councilman?
Yeah, the mayor talked about the 0.3 which is totally true. When the public safety sales tax was originally adopted by the legislature, it forbade supplanting. In 2010, that changed, and this is something that I know the mayor knows because she voted for this bill, because what you can now do is now you can supplant with those dollars. That forbidding of those dollars being used that way was removed. And so these dollars, even though they might be 100% used towards public safety purposes, you can take funds from the general fund and spend them on something else.
Thank you. Since this is a public safety measure, we had a number of questions about public safety in general, and perhaps this question from a Rotarian would serve to provide the why to something like this. What are your goals for police and fire response times in the city? And perhaps what they were saying behind that question is are we not there yet today with our current funding? Response times.
Yes, we are not there today with our current funding. There are nationally accepted fire safety response times. Our department works very hard on that, and our current staffing levels are adequate. But if we don't recruit a new fire academy, we will be relying on overtime, which will both burn out our firefighters as well as likely result in reduced response times. It's also fleet and equipment, and our fleet is clearly over its useful, its generally accepted useful life. Under the last administration, a fund dedicated to capital funding through our property tax was dismantled. One-time funds were spent on ongoing expenditures. We've got to rebuild that system, and this community safety sales tax will be part of that on the fire side. On the police side, the traffic safety fits in very clearly with other types of criminal activity. Oftentimes you identify someone's criminal activity through a traffic stop. So this is an important part of our community safety. And I know, as someone who's been recently in our neighborhoods, when school is out, people are ignoring the traffic laws. The word is out that traffic is not being enforced. We need that safety both for everybody who's in a car, on a bike, our kids going to schools and parks, and this will provide that.
And Councilman, that question was supposed to go to you. I apologize. So I'm going to give you a little extra time in your rebuttal.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. Our response times could absolutely be better, and this is something that we are working on. The mayor said a lot there that is 100% accurate. We need to continue to work making sure that our police and first responders have the adequate resources to be able to respond to the crimes that are being committed. Now, again, I think one of the ways that we could increase or to better our response times is if we didn't have police officers sitting outside of a jail while it's at red light status, and they're sitting with somebody who's committed a crime and they cannot put somebody into the jail and they have to wait hours on end. If we had some space where we could put criminals, one of the things that we could do is we could get officers back onto the streets faster, they could respond faster, and these are investments that we need to continue to make both in police and in fire. Am I getting a little, yeah. These are investments that we need to continue to make in police and fire, which is exactly what the plan was last year as we were moving forward. I'll continue to propose that plan to where we can get back to increasing capital in the budget to get us back to where we need to be as a city.
Great, thank you. This is indeed to you. And it's related, and it is probably more a statistics item, but this Rotarian asked an interesting question. What evidence is there that more police officers directly lead to reduced crime in any community?
Well, again, I would invite you to invite Chief Hall here because he's got some really compelling ideas about this, about how you use data and how you use place-based policing and how you use police and our firefighters in conjunction with first responders and a system. And I agree with a council member. We don't want a police officer sitting for hours at a jail, but we are proposing solutions to that through a navigation center and through expansion of the crisis residential center. And what we have heard from him is we will get a plan for a jail at some point. What we have an opportunity to do now is to start building those ancillary pieces that will help us reduce the need for people to be in jail in the first place. And right now we have a cycle that people go through on the streets, in the emergency room, in a homeless shelter, back on the streets, maybe being responded to by a first responder with Narcan. We're forming a high utilizer initiative that identifies the top 100 people in that system in terms of their impact on costs in those systems. And we're working to bring a case managed system. We did that as a part of my declaration of the opioid emergency. We did the contract, and that is underway right now to start identifying those individuals and getting them off the streets and from having that huge impact on our system.
Councilman?
Yeah, I mean, Councilmember Cathcart and I brought forward a high utilizer ordinance last year, and it failed. And so again, what it comes down to is the council majority being willing to do this. And I appreciate that work being done because it's desperately needed. But I'm sorry, you're just not going to navigate felons. You're just not going to navigate felons, right? Currently, we only have about 25% of our felony property crimes that can be responded to by our police. Felonies, 25% right now. And that's not because we don't have a navigation center. And there actually are really good studies that show more officers on the streets will reduce crime because you have a deterrent in their presence. But those studies also assume that you have sufficient jail space.
Good. President Page, how are we doing? One more question? One more question, okay. We're going to go back to the question of what happens if Proposition 1 does not pass. And this is more of a, do things actually go backwards or do they just not go forward? But the question was, bottom line, will there be reductions in fire and police services if Proposition 1 does not pass? Is it feasible to add more officers without it? And is it feasible to add more officers to, well, without it? They said it twice. Without it. And that's for you, Councilman.
For me?
Yes.
Okay. Is it feasible to add? Probably not, unless this passes. Now, again, the question comes down to, again, adding more police officers is great. I support that idea. Again, I have been long a proponent of a sales tax measure that would increase the police force. But again, the problem is that the deterrent of your presence only works, again, if there is sufficient jail space. And so with this, we won't be able to add more police officers, but we won't be able to add fire. We won't be able to add any more positions because we'll have to continue trimming the budget. Now, again, there are departments that can be trimmed, and it would be an unhappy trimming. But right now, in a budget deficit, you have to focus on the basics. We have to get back to the basics, which is public safety and infrastructure. There is nothing else that we should be focused on as a city other than public safety and infrastructure. Those are the things that we exist to do. And so without it, no, we're not going to be able to add any police officers. But again, we remain committed. I myself remain committed to a ballot measure that will go out that would be a coordinated effort with the county, with the valley, with the surrounding areas, because it is desperately needed, not just in the city of Spokane, but throughout the surrounding region. And because the jail is currently located in the city of Spokane, we are dealing with the effects of crime from the entire region, and it must be a regional approach.
To be clear, we've taken some reductions in police and fire as part of narrowing this gap. The Police Guild proposed the salary savings plan, which we took, allowing senior officers to retire, and the Fire Academy was postponed. If this measure doesn't pass, we cannot add capacity into those departments. However, they did give me 10% proposed budget reductions as part of this two-year budget, and I refuse to take those because the status quo, while not ideal, certainly shouldn't be deteriorated even further. But municipal court is also part of this, and we need capacity in municipal court. Prosecutors, defenders, we need to utilize these best practices that keep offenders off the street, that divert them into therapeutic-based courts, that use electronic monitoring and best practices to keep them out of jail.
Thank you. And we've reached the time for closing statements, and as a result of our coin toss, Mayor Brown, you will go first.
Thank you. So I think we've covered the ground pretty thoroughly and sometimes even a little repetitively here. But let me just say, if you read the Inlander article that interviewed all of our 29 neighborhoods, read what they say. They're very concerned about traffic safety and the connection of that to our overall feeling of safety in the community. And so part of this proposal does go to that. And I think it's important, as I said before, 66% increase in serious and fatal crashes in our county from 2019 to 2022. But this directly impacts the other thing people are most concerned about, and that is safety in our core. So I encourage you to look at the core plan put together by Chief Hall in consultation with community groups and with providers in our social service system, because having those providers being able to sustain that on the ground foot and bike patrol police presence downtown that we're putting in place right now, being able to sustain that at the same time telling neighborhoods, and you get your neighborhood resource officers back, is going to create a better system, and it's an actual enhancement in the size of our police force, which the community supports, and for this small price we will be able to attain that.
Councilman Bingle?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not the idea that I hate. I think the idea has a lot of merit, but again, it comes down to what does public safety mean and what's going to make an actual impact on public safety. And, if we added 50 officers on the streets tomorrow, you would see a small decrease in crime because there would be that deterrent factor. But again, until we have an actual jail, a fully coordinated jail with all the services necessary to house people in crisis or to help people in crisis as well, then we're not going to be able to make a serious dent in public safety. And so to you, I ask again, what is your priority? If you're looking for a safer Spokane, and actually safer Spokane, this measure is not going to accomplish that. Now, it also comes down to, again, that element of trust. Now, things that I proposed that were rejected, the sunset in the ballot measure, rejected. The fund being in the ballot measure, rejected. The coordination with the county, rejected. Those are things that, again, in the ballot language would have kept them out of our control. We could not have overturned that in the same way that we as a council cannot overturn Proposition 1 from last year that we all want enforced. Now, when it comes down to that, enforcing our laws, expanding sit and lie, these are all things that we've been proposing and bringing forward, things that have not passed with this council. And it is the council majority that is going to make the decisions because, who controls the purse strings is the council. And so the mayor may have plans that are coming forward. In the end, what we need to understand is what is this council majority going to do? And they've already shown their hand. We have already shown our hand in what we believe public safety means to us. And when we tell you who we are, believe us.
Thank you, Councilman Bingle, and thanks to both of you today for not only your great public service to our city, but your passion today and candor today and professionalism today, I would add. I appreciate all that you've done. And to you, our Rotarians, for following the rules, no outbursts or anything like that. So well done again. So please join me in thanking these two great public officials.